Hi, this is Matt from Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and you're listening to another fantastic show on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Visit selfdefenseradio.net to check out all the other great shows.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one on Tuesday, February 25th, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morris, and on tonight's show, we'll talk with Rhonda Ezell, who founded Chicago Guns Matter.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about some success on gun control bills in Virginia.
I'm Gary Doherty, and in one of our DGUs, we talk about 2 gunfights at a mailbox. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 532 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and we're back. We're a day late. I hope that doesn't mean we're $1 short. Rob, what's been up with you since the last time we've been on the air, man?
I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio program. Boy, the SHOT Show crud has kicked the daylights out of a lot of my friends. It's taken them a month to recover. I recorded one episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories with Andy Reardon O'Brien, and Thursday I get to record again with Ben Branham. I'm looking forward to that. I was a little ill, can't blame SHOT Show, so it's been hard to be as physically active and work out the way I'd like. I carried every day and did some dry practice. John, have you stayed healthy?
I have finally gotten over the SHOT Show crud. I had bronchitis.
Yeah.
But I was on Gun Politics and Freedom Radio with Paul Vallone this past Sunday. We discussed the pro-gun choices in the March 3rd North Carolina primary. I also received a couple of orders of AK-47 and 74 magazines. And all I'm going to say is AK magazines, other than Comblock Milsurp, are finicky as hell. Some work, many don't. I have a lot of setting and fitting ahead of me with some of these mags. I would say the reason is there is no real mil-spec when it comes to AKs. To the weapons themselves. So your mag wells vary a bit.
I would have thought, what you hear about AKs, and I've never owned one, but what you hear about AKs is, the loose tolerances, you can't kill the things. They're made so that a person that's been conscripted to the military and has very little education can take them apart, put them back together. You can throw them in mud, they'll still work. Well, if the mags are finicky, that's no good.
Exactly. And yeah, they're not, the guns themselves are not finicky, it's just their magazines are. Unlike an AR where I've had almost no trouble getting a magazine to lock into place, drop when it should. I think Americans are a little bit more conscious about what makes mil-spec than people in Pakistan, the Khyber Pass, Hungary, Bulgaria, whatever.
All right.
China.
Well, Gary, what's been up with you since the last time you've been on the air, man?
I haven't gotten to the range. I've been doing a little dry fire at home and carrying every day. And I've talked about this last year. My representative, local state representative, is paying me to teach a concealed carry class for constituents. And last year we had a church, and this year we're struggling to find a location. So it's going to happen. I'll figure it out and figure a way to make it happen. We just haven't gotten it nailed down yet. So still working on it.
All right.
Well, Gary, I thought of you. Did you see where this church had 300 this Cincinnati church had 300 black women in their basement taking a firearms class?
No, was that what's the name in Detroit or?
No. I think
Okay.
Cincinnati, and I'm wrong. 179, something like that. I thought of you, and I went, "Oh, yes."
Yeah,
Oh well,
All right,
that's
well,
fabulous. I would, I tried to do National Trainer Teacher Day last year, and I think I had 8 people show up, but they were all already active shooters. I was really hoping to present to the curious, not to the diehards. I mean, the class still went well. I had a first aid instructor did a great job on stopping bleeding and stuff like that, but I really was hoping for more curious.
more beginners. Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't happen. So, well, either you're already in or you're not, I guess. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We do need to introduce a new staff member to the Polite Society podcast. Monty Heitzman has been a friend of mine. Well, I described it earlier. I think we met shortly after the Lincoln administration.
Absolutely.
Monty and I have known each other since the late 80s when we both worked in television here in Sioux Falls. Monty, you want to introduce yourself a little bit, and what have you been doing in the gun arena lately?
Well, I can tell you I don't get to the range nearly enough. I have been carrying a little more frequently lately than I normally do, and I was actually looking into taking the enhanced concealed carry permit class here next month. So I think you and I had talked about taking that together, hadn't we?
Yeah, we did, and for me, it's all about home time. If I can get home and get the time off, and if the bills allow it, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Now, we don't have an enhanced carry permit down here in Louisiana. Where can you go with that you can't go with your standard permit?
There are 7 additional states. I know it includes Minnesota and Nebraska, which are neighboring states to South Dakota, which kind of is why I want to get it. Do you know the other states, Paul?
I know Washington is in there, and it used to be South Carolina was in there, but I don't know if that's true anymore. I don't know all of them, no.
Okay, cool.
So what have you been up to, Paul?
Well, I made a trip out to Las Vegas. Las Vegas has a supply of ice cream now. And then I ran into California and grabbed some baby carrots, and now the Twin Cities has a good supply of baby carrots. Been doing the disarmament dance, of course, putting the gun away and locking it and the ammunition separately when I'm in non-permissive states. And I've been doing a lot of work on AMCON and a lot of work on the Gun Rights Policy Conference broadcast. We're only 7 months away. That just blew me away when I looked it up the other day. We're only 7 months away from that whole circus again, and I can't wait. I'm already getting pumped up for it. We had a conference call for the planning committee for AMCON, and we're already talking speakers and talking. We're going to be adding, for example, ammoman.com is going to be coming aboard, and they're going to be sponsoring a morning coffee this year, which is something a lot of people have been requesting, is a morning coffee to kind of wake everybody up in the morning. And ammoman.com is going to go ahead, and our good friend Kevin Creighton there is going to step up, and they're going to pay for coffee for everybody. And that, folks, is not cheap. Those hotels really soak you for the coffee, but they're going to go ahead and do that, and I'm really pleased that they're coming aboard for that.
Well, I will mention that last GRPC in Chicago, it was $740 for one urn of coffee.
Yeah,
and that wasn't refills all day. That was for one urn of coffee.
And believe it or not, it's more expensive in Orlando.
I bet it.
So yeah, it
was like that at Chicago. Yeah, it's scary.
When I found out what the total bill would be, I went, And then I told Kevin, he goes, I think we can do that. So I'm very cool. I was very happy that's going to happen. Upcoming training classes. Gary, you got anything? When is that class that you're going to be doing for the constituents of that legislator?
Well, we're trying to do it in April, but like I said, we're still struggling for a location right at the moment, so I might have to push it back. But it'll be 16 hours in Illinois, so it'll be two days.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not even for sure yet how that's going to line up, but hopeful.
All right.
We got the will, now we just need the location.
There you go. Well, I'm before we go off to break, I want to encourage everybody to go to the Self Defense Radio Network website. For those of you that are watching live, you can see it up on your screen right now. Got a dozen shows up there right now. Very soon, we're going to be adding at least 2 more as soon as I can get the people that help me run the network all together in one place at one time, and that's sometimes a challenge. But if you can see right now on your screen, we got Armed Lutheran Radio, Self-Defense Gun Stories, Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, Eye on the Target, Firearms Chat, a bunch of great shows. You can listen right off the website, and you can subscribe to each show. All the subscription information is right there. We are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Rhonda Ezell of Ezell versus Chicago, and we'll get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our interview segment, and joining us tonight, Rhonda Ezell. Rhonda is the plaintiff, I guess, in Ezell versus Chicago, and I've wanted to have her on the air for a very long time. It just so happened the stars aligned. We're able to get her tonight. Thank you for coming on the air, Rhonda.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
So to get started here, I know there's a lot of different things we got to talk about, but I want to talk about the one thing I've wanted to talk to you about on the air since we've met is Ezell versus Chicago.
Okay.
Before that case, you could theoretically get a concealed carry permit in Chicago. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the requirements is you had to get training, and there was nowhere in Chicago because of zoning laws that you could get training at. So you had to travel quite a distance to get your training for the permit. Do I have that right?
Partially correct, Paul. It wasn't for the concealed carry license. It was just for the right to own a gun in the home.
Oh. Oh.
Yes, it was this. The Ezell versus the City of Chicago case came about after the Otis McDonald case. The City of Chicago had a total ban on firearm ownership altogether. So the McDonald versus Chicago case, which was the Supreme Court victory that took place, was to strike down the ban of firearm ownership. So I was complying with that ordinance, because in order to have a gun in the home, you had to take a class, you had to have live range training. And the city, they mandated the training, but at the same time, they prohibited gun ranges. So
Okay.
it was just for firearm ownership.
So and now was that had the concealed carry permit happened in Illinois when this case happened, or was this before? Because I know the concealed carry permit in Illinois was, I believe, if not the second to the last state to get concealed carry.
Actually, Illinois was the last state. And concealed carry had not been on the table at the time, because we had the McDonald versus Chicago case. Then we had my case, Ezell versus City of Chicago, where I was the lead plaintiff, took on the City of Chicago for the right to bring brick and mortar gun ranges to the city. And so we took on the City of Chicago for that. And after those, we won 2 federal wins against the City of Chicago. Then that's when we had Mary Shepard and Michael Moore take on the state of Illinois for concealed carry. So collectively, it took the McDonald versus Chicago, Ezell versus Chicago, and the combination of the other 2 cases to take on the state of Illinois to bring concealed carry.
Okay. It had to have been, I got to commend you, because I know you got help at the end of the case, at least at the end of the case, from the SAF. I know that, but when, for you to stand up and say, look, this isn't right, and I'm going to take the city to court, that took some intestinal fortitude. That's not something that your average person just, okay, I'm going to do it.
Right. And I tell people all the time that it takes a strong individual to be willing to put themselves in harm's way, to go up against the political powers to be, to stand up for gun rights, or any other right for that matter. And just on a small correction there, the Second Amendment Foundation was the primary source of financing these lawsuits altogether, so they were there from the beginning.
Right.
The Second Amendment Foundation paid for our cases.
Okay.
So to say that, yes, I will be the plaintiff, we will take on the City of Chicago, it takes grit and guts, because, you can put yourself in a lot of danger. These people don't like the Second Amendment. They don't like you owning firearms, and how dare you stand up against the political power to be in the establishment.
And one thing I've always wanted to say, and you're the perfect person to say it with, is you can fight City Hall.
Absolutely.
Rob, you're in show notes. I think you had a question you wanted to ask. What's up, man?
Yeah, Rhonda, I learned about politics in Chicago. I went to school there for college, which was quite the education. But between zoning, fees, taxes, regulations, that could make it impossible to open a range in Chicago. And yet, Chicago politicians would say, oh no, we've let them, they just don't want to. Is a judge going to accept that answer, or could a judge say, no, you can't require any live training until there are 5 operating ranges in Chicago? I mean, do judges get how corrupt Chicago that it is, or are they looking the other way?
Well, judges know. Judges, along with any other individual in this state, know that, one, the City of Chicago is the #1 corrupt city in the nation, and the state of Illinois is the #3 corrupt state in the nation. So it's here nor there about whether they know the corruption is there. It's there. I don't think a judge can say, well, you can't do this until this happened, because the cases have been fought, the cases have been won, the foundation has been laid. We just need someone to come in and say, okay, how do we sit down at the table and work these things out? They exist because this is the City of Chicago. We have a new governor. He will tax bubble gum if you're chewing it loud enough. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah,
so when
he
it
will.
comes down to the gun range situation, who wants to say, well, how do we sit down to the table and cross some T's and dot some I's and ask these people, what are they willing to do here to change some of the things that will affect actually bringing the brick and mortar gun range. They can't stop it from being built. If you have a billionaire that wants to build a range, or a millionaire that has the money and he's not concerned about the taxes, and he knows that he's going to have great revenues because location, you put this thing in a great space, you have 3 million FOIA card holders in the entire state. People are going to come from across wherever just to say, I shot in Chicago. That would be the thing. But I don't think a judge can say, well, until this happens, then we'll change something. You know what I'm saying? Because the cases are over with.
Okay.
Right.
We just need an investor.
Meaning the judge, to my mind, the judge wrote a reasonable ruling for any other city but Chicago.
Well, Chicago politicians put in their rules and regulations at the end. One thing they're going to try to do is definitely prevent something that they don't want happening to happen.
Right.
So this is all politics, money, and power.
Right. Thank you.
I want to mention to people watching live on Facebook, you can ask Rhonda a question. Just comment on the live video. It pops up after a few seconds over on my feed over here, and I will ask the question for you to Rhonda. We'll get your question answered on the air. John, you had a question that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, Rhonda. The case that we normally call Ezell 2, was that also about ranges?
It was. Ezell 2 was the second case with striking down more shenanigans with the city of Chicago, because the first Ezell versus Chicago case was about the mere fact of bringing a gun range, having a gun range readily available, accessing the range. Then once we won that, they came back and said, well, you know what? You can't put 500 yards here, one by a church or by a school. You have to keep it in manufacturing district. We want to limit the age of minors, and the owner must have valid FOIA card, and so on and so on. And these are the things that we came back in Ezell 2 to strike down. So it was significant that we came back and we struck down a enormous amount of regulations that they tried to put in place to continue violating the rights, and we did that.
Very good. Thank you.
Am I right that SAF found a range that was basically in a semi-tractor trailer they were going to drag in?
Well, they did bring one in at some point in time, and I want to say it was Tom Gresham had something to do with that as well. So I didn't get all the deep basics on all of that detail, but I know it did occur. They actually brought in a mobile range, sat it on the south side of Chicago, and said, look, we can do this. Because I think what occurred was the city of Chicago, knowing that they did not want a brick and mortar gun range, they may have proposed, well, can't you guys use a mobile range or something, thinking that it was impossible to do. And boom, here we are. This is what we do. We are the 2A community. And up pops a range. And guess what? It is banned right now to this day. You can't even bring a mobile range. So I can't even have my friends to bring their mobile ranges. Because once they came with those little shenanigans and we proved them wrong that it could be done, then they was like, oh my God, they can do that? Let's ban that too. And it's written right now today in the ordinance.
Did you notice, and I'm sure you saw it, that a church in Cincinnati had 179 black women getting concealed carry training in the church basement?
I saw that. I came across it. I didn't read it, but I saw it, and I was happy to see that. I mean, it should happen. It should have happened a long time ago, and it should continue to happen, and it should be all over the country. It shouldn't be a surprise anymore where women, black women, the black community are exercising their fundamental constitutional rights. Trust me, they are doing it. But somewhere in the back of their mind, they know that politicians and the powers to be at some point in time will do something to obstruct them and do something to harm them. Like, that's the mentality. I'm not worried about it. Exercise your rights, do it the right way, and whatever happens, happens. But you can't be afraid get up and get out and get involved and start being proactive and protecting yourself.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right, and even with all the hard work that Rhonda did twice, 2 different cases, there's still no range in the city of Chicago. They still require an hour of shooting to get your concealed carry permit. So they've still made it possible, or virtually impossible. I know Rhonda's got her permit, but it made it virtually impossible for residents of Chicago to carry and protect themselves.
Well, I don't like that statement, and it's said a lot, and I get it, even though we still don't have a range. That is the purpose of Chicago Guns Matter, our organization. We were the plaintiffs. We restored the rights, so they're available. You can do it. It may be a little bit tougher, but you have to have 16 hours of training. That 1 hour thing was a Chicago firearm permit that no longer exists.
Oh.
So that was just for firearm ownership in the home back in 2010 with the McDonald case. That is no longer law.
I understand.
With concealed carry, you have to have 16 hours of training, and you still have to have 4 hours or however many hours on the range. And you still don't have a range, and you're correct. We still don't have a range, but it's not that they're stopping you from having the range. It's we still haven't had an investor to even come in to say, I want to build a range here. And they can kind of figure the details out as they go along. So, but yes, it's still some red tape here. We have a Illinois State Police organization that is stealing the funds. They've ciphered $30 million out of the funding and shipped it to Lord knows who, nowhere. They're not utilizing it for the FOID card application or the renewals of FOID, the concealed carry licenses, or the renewal of concealed carry licenses. But yet we see them putting forth more legislation to ask gun owners to pay higher fees and regulations to exercise a fundamental constitutional right. I'm just waiting for someone to step up and say, I will be the plaintiff to rid the FOID card, because it's time to void the FOID in Illinois.
Right on.
Rhonda, what does Chicago Guns Matter do to help new gun owners? Do they say, here, come talk to us, we'll explain it, and Tuesday we're taking a bus out of town to go to a shooting range?
No, Chicago Guns Matter is not membership based, but people are more than welcome to reach out to us anytime they feel like they want to reach out to us on social media, and we will, or send us an email, and we will relate back with the people, because it's important that they understand who fought for their rights and who we are. It's one thing to say you're at a policy conference and you've been going to these conferences for a decade and you've heard every speaker talk about McDonald versus Chicago or Ezell case or the Shepherd case or the Moore case, but did you even realize who these people were? So putting faces to the cases is what we do with Chicago Guns Matter. We wanted to humanize the cases instead of just being a household name in the firearm industry.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are coming up on break here. Can I ask you to hang out with us for one more segment?
Absolutely.
All right. Folks, we are going to step aside to break. We've got one more segment with Rhonda Ezell. We'll get right back to that right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, and we're back. Rhonda, I want to move to a little bit of a different direction here. One of the things I've heard about recently going on for Chicago in Chicago and more specifically in Illinois is that there's a proposal in the legislature that in order to have a FOID card, you must have $1 million in liability insurance, and that just to get a FOID card, and that's going to price almost everybody but the very financially well-to-do right out of the firearms market.
That's going to finance every gun owner right up out of the market. Would you pay $1 million to have car insurance?
No.
So what we're seeing here, though, what we're seeing is just another attack on Second Amendment rights. These are the same people that were caught stealing the monies that are already paid into the Illinois State Police system. So in order to continue the corruption of stealing the finances, they have to come up with more legislation. None of this, even if it was affordable, is going to do anything to stop the violence or prevent the next mass shooting, because criminals don't follow the law.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear the rock.
A lot of these. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear the rocks in my head, but I'm nodding right along with you. That this is, it's going to do nothing to curb gun violence. The only thing it's going to do is increase it because the law-abiding people just won't be able to afford the $1 million of coverage.
Well, you know, one thing I like for us to do, even in the Second Amendment community, is stop using their terminology of gun violence. Violence is violence.
Yes.
But when we're talking about violence in the city of Chicago, where I'm from, 95.5% of that violence is gang-related. And so I don't latch on to the terminology of gun violence because that's the way to hold law-abiding citizens responsible for the actions of the criminals.
Gotcha. Chicago Guns Matter. You said that's not a membership organization. It's a gun owners aid organization. So does it operate by charity if you don't have memberships? How does it run?
Well, we've been running off our own. We had a couple of grants that we've gotten. There are people who like to donate. They're more than welcome to donate. We don't have a donate button, but we will figure things out that way.
You'll figure it out.
Right, we'll figure it out. If you say you would like to donate to Chicago Guns Matter, we'll take a check. You ready to check out the Chicago Guns Matter? And that's the way we can do that. But like I stated, it's important that people understand that the work that Chicago Guns Matter has done, it's not just for Chicago. These cases have been cited all over the country, and they're going to continue to move the Second Amendment forward for decades. So, you know, I don't know if they're going to ever respect the work that we did to put us in the history books and continue the historical moments in the Second Amendment movement, but that is the reason that we leave digital footprint on social media. Hopefully some of the new generations or someone else come across some of the photos and articles and things of that nature, and it strike some type of light bulb in their heads and say, oh, well, we have these rights, because nowadays people are marching and protesting to give away their rights.
One of the things I'm probably too much involved in is social media, and you and I are connected on Facebook. I have seen a lot of pictures of you lately, and you've got the tag phrase, "Don't let them trick you into your grave," on a lot of your social media posts. You want to talk about that a little bit? What brought that on? That, I mean, it's a great tagline. What was the inspiration for that?
I've been saying that all of my life, Paul, and I thought I'd share it with the world, because every day that we wake up and we do things to move our lives forward, there's something waiting to knock you 100 steps back.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you don't understand what happened with slavery or the Jim Crow laws or gun control measures, that's an easy mark for people to tell you that guns are bad, you shouldn't be owning a firearm. At the end of the day, you're going to give away your rights. You're going to end up in a situation like Venezuela and end up being murdered. That's being tricked into your grave because you've been lied to. And that goes with anything. And I mean that wholeheartedly. That is a personal statement that I've always said, I always will say, and I will continue to say each and every chance that I get an opportunity, because people and things are not what they perceive to themselves to be. It's always something lurking in the dark.
Rhonda, I've met you. I thought you were a hero. How are you treated by the media in Chicago?
The media won't speak with me in Chicago. They don't want to speak with me in Chicago.
Really?
Because, yeah, absolutely. They're not interested in sitting down and having a positive conversation on the history of firearm ownership in Chicago. That's not what they want. They want to mentally manipulate the minds of the general public and continue to tell them that guns are bad, we have this violence, and no one should own a gun. I mean, I got the opportunity to meet the new mayor one time. I never met the previous administration. A decade ago, I had an interview on Fox News and a couple of little radio stations here and there, but they're not trying to reach out. I even reached out to one of the news anchors just a week ago, and I said, look, great job on the programming here for Black History Month, but this is who we are. You guys need to kind of step your game up and update the profile of what's really going on here in the city of Chicago. If you're going to honor and recognize historian or historical things, take a look at this. Yeah, you got a like button, and that was it. So they're really not trying to promote the positivity of firearm ownership because they're too busy trying to trick you in your grave to tell you don't own a gun and that your president is a racist and these things like that. And when they tell you that, you believe these things, but you're still marching and protesting to give away those rights. If these things came true, how would you defend that life?
Right. Yeah. Isn't it interesting? And you must hear it 1,000 times for every time I hear it once. They go, "Isn't that what the police are for?" And you go, do you have a watch? Can you count? You know, it's like, wow.
You know, that statement, I can tell people that I actually called the police one time years ago. And when they got there, he said, well, you know, get a baseball bat. And I said, thank you for coming out. I'll take it from here. Have a good day. I never called it again. I told them I would take it from here. I mean, you want me to get a baseball bat and do what? Open a door to not know how many assailants are on the outside or how many are, you know, what? That would be the stupidest thing one could do is go outside and open your door and invite trouble inside. Yeah, they're on the outside. You want to protect that perimeter and say, look, well, I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to go out with a gun and so on and so forth or whatever the case may be. At that time, we wouldn't even have one. And you call these people and he comes and says, well, hey, get a baseball bat. Told him, good day. Good day, I got this.
You know, and I bet you he didn't walk up to come and contact you with a baseball bat on his belt. He had a gun in his holster.
And, you know, you try to do the right thing. You're thinking you're doing the right thing when you call the authorities. I know that it's not their job to protect an individual. The we serve and protect on the side of the card means that they serve and protect the law. They don't protect individuals. But, you know, before I put myself in a situation where I am forced to defend myself, let me call these guys and see just exactly what's going to happen. And I got that answer. And, I mean, that was a long time ago. I never dialed the number again. And I don't think I ever will.
I have seen you. I first met you at Gun Rights Policy Conference the last time it was in Orlando. We're going back this year, but that I believe that was 8 years ago. this fall.
In Orlando?
Yeah.
I've never been in Orlando.
Oh, well,
I haven't
goodness.
been to. It had to have been in Chicago.
Okay. Well, it was the following year with Chicago. That may have been. I know I met you when I very first started going to them. Maybe it might not have been the first one. It might have been the second. But I do see you speaking at various. I did at various venues throughout the year. Is that something that? Is that something you enjoy, or do people regularly reach out for you to speak, or is it more of a rarity where because I got to tell you, you're one of the most articulate people, one of the people who's made the biggest difference in the Second Amendment arena. I would think the people just be beating down your door to deliver your message.
Well, I do speak a lot, and I like speaking because I'm one of those that's gonna tell the truth. I'm gonna tell it like it is and a little bit unfiltered, but at the same time, I think it's important that we voice our opinion, and I don't shy away from speaking at all. They're not knocking the door down, but if they do, I'm here. So I don't have a problem with getting up in front of a crowd of people and talking with them and trying to share our stories with them so they can get a better understanding of who we are and the things that we've done to help move the Second Amendment forward.
All right. Well, we've just got a couple minutes here left. You mentioned earlier that that you do accept donations for Chicago Guns Matter. Do you have a website for that? If people want to learn more about you and about Chicago Guns Matter, how do they do that?
Well, they could go to our website at www.chicagogunsmatter.org, or they could go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Chicago Guns Matter, or they can go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Rhonda Ezell, or at @MS_EZELL. They can send us an email, and we will respond, and we can take it from there.
Okay, and Charlie Cook, you know Charlie. Charlie's a good friend of the show. Before we take off to break here, I just want to bring this up. Charlie just commented on social media, to serve and protect really means to clean up and write a report. Is what serve and protect is really all about. All right, Rhonda, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it was short notice to get you on the air, but thank you for joining us, and I really want to ask you back again soon.
Absolutely, Paul. Thank you and Rob for having me. I appreciate speaking with you guys, and I'm looking forward to you having me on again and seeing you guys later this year.
All righty, folks, we are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our news segment, and one of the stories is about the racist roots of gun control. We'll be right back with that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
And welcome back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Again, this is our news segment, and we're going to bring our new guy in. Monty, first we have a news story out of Virginia. What's going on there, man?
Thank you, Paul. In Virginia, the state Senate did not approve the semi-automatic firearms suppressors and standard capacity magazine ban. The House delegates passed the bill last week and it went to the Senate. Previously, the Senate Judiciary Committee had set aside their version of the bill. In a bipartisan vote, 4 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote with the Republicans on the committee to table the legislation until next year. The vote was 10-5. While not killed outright, this defers any legislation action until next year. The state's crime commission will study the issue until sometime during next year. In the meantime, the Second Amendment supporters in Virginia will have to continue to lobby the Senate and keep the bill sidelined, or possibly even vote it down totally. Pro-Second Amendment Virginians may be able to muster enough votes to oust the sitting governor, but he will not come up for re-election for another 2 years. What do the Brady Bunch? Mommy's waiting action.
Oh, hold on, just a second.
Sorry?
You jumped the gun on us, Gary. You had a comment on that last story. What's up, Ben?
Well, I heard an interesting take on this, that they're afraid if they pass something like this and it gets to the Supreme Court, which it would work its way through the courts and end up at the Supremes, that by that time Ruth Bader Ginsburg would be replaced, and
your lips to God's ears, man.
Right?
Well, that's what they're afraid of, is that it'll actually get to the Supremes and overturned and really destroy a lot of gun regulation that's coming up. John?
John, you mute.
John says, one correction, Virginia governors cannot run for re-election.
Yep. Sorry, I was on mute, so I didn't cough on anybody's ear. Yeah, and that's the good news. I mean, Northam, he's a lame duck.
Do you know, John?
His second term?
No.
They only get one term.
One and done.
Oh,
one and done.
Beautiful.
Don't they get? But if I remember, it's one. I thought it was Virginia. Isn't they? Aren't they an off year?
Yes.
They elect in the third year. It's either the first or the third year after the presidential election, right?
So
Right.
It's not during a presidential or a midterm, is what you're saying, Paul.
Mm-mm. It's always an odd year, just like New Jersey.
Okay. All right. Well, now, Monty, if you want to, you can take off on that next story.
Wait. I'm
What?
still waiting.
I was going to say, Rob has a
Oh,
comment.
my apologies.
During that debate, when Virginia citizens were forced from the room to ram through that vote, there was a Virginia congressman who came to testify, and he absolutely said what John is saying. He goes, you guys have the votes to do this. You can. But the egregious violations that you passed today may well be in front of the Supreme Court in a real hurry. And he, as he says, and I look forward to that, because that may let people carry ARs on their back across the country, given the laws that you've passed or proposed to pass here today. So I thought that was a brilliant way to push back.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm wondering myself when we're going to get to, because there are a lot of states, California, Colorado, that have magazine restrictions as far as the number of rounds. I'm waiting for that to get to the Supreme Court. Right now we're still at a 5-4, but if Sonia Sotomayor, who is a brittle diabetic, were to retire, or if Ruth Bader Ginsburg were to retire, it could quickly become a 6-4, and then Katie barred the door for pro-rights lawsuits to get up there.
Well, it's a fragile 5-4. I don't think it's a strong 5-4. So far, it's been okay, but it's
Yeah.
had risk.
All right, are we? Let me check now. Are we done with this one?
Thank you.
All right, Monty. Let's go ahead and talk about the racist roots of gun control.
Thank you, Paul. What do the Brady Bunch, Mommy's Waiting Action, Illegal Mayor Against Guns, and the Ku Klux Klan have in common? They're all gun control organizations. David Hogg, otherwise known as Piglet, is the gift that keeps giving. A week or so ago, he tweeted, "This is a tweet for the founders of gun violence prevention movement started centuries ago by almost entirely black, brown, and indigenous LGBTQ women and non-binary people that never got on the news or in history books. We may not know all of your names, but thank you." We see the beginning of gun control in 1619 when the Virginia provincial legislature passed its first gun control laws. It was a race-based total gun ban. Quote, that all such free mulattoes, Negroes, and Indians shall appear without arms. In 1640, Virginia reaffirmed the earlier law to include clubs. In 1712, Virginia passed the act preventing Negroes' insurrection, and South Carolina also got into the act. The United States itself has not been innocent. Following the ratification of the Second Amendment, they passed the Uniform Militia Act of 1792, which excluded blacks from the militia. Throughout the antebellum years, slave states continued to pass race-based gun laws. The U.S. Supreme Court held slavery and blacks as not being citizens. In Dred Scott versus Sanford, Chief Justice Taney argued that if blacks were citizens, then all rights included in the Constitution would apply to them. Then we fought a civil war which cost nearly 750,000 American lives. That was nearly 2% of the male population to end slavery. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments ensured that all blacks were free citizens. The 14th Amendment required gun control laws to be racially neutral, so Tennessee and Arkansas prohibited owning handguns freed slaves could afford, by only allowing Army and Navy handguns, which were more expensive. After Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, many of the CSA officers were allowed to retain their sidearm. South Carolina outlawed concealed carry, while blacks who violated the law ended up on a chain gang. Whites who violated the law were only fined. Many states outlawed inexpensive firearms, former slaves, the types former slaves could afford. By the 20th century, the laws denying guns to non-whites moved north to Ohio and Illinois. Justice Clarence Thomas's opinion in McDonald versus Chicago explicitly pointed to gun control as race control. Yet people like Piglet and other gun control groups will point to those laws as pioneers in the, quote, gun violence prevention movement, end quote. I guess they didn't teach history at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School or at Harvard University. As David Koppel and Joseph Greenlee put at the end of the 2017 article on the Hill website, self-defense is an inherent human right. The 14th Amendment is America's promise that no law-abiding person will be deprived of that right, regardless of color. Recently, a bill was introduced in Illinois which would require firearms ownership identification card holders to carry $1 million of liability insurance in order to get their FOID cards. Not every FOID card holder is a gun owner. Who would this mostly affect? It would mostly affect low-income gun owners who tend to live in high-crime areas. A majority of those citizens tend to be minorities. Yet another attempt at a racist gun control measure.
All right, Rob, you're first up in show notes, man.
Yeah, the anti-rights bigots rewrite history to suit their propaganda.
Always.
And too many of the mainstream media cover for them. Our modern heroes, Rhonda Ezell, Ken Blanchard, Rick Ector, they put their heart and mind on the line every day. They tell the truth. If you want to learn more, go listen to them. This is so prescient. Ken Blanchard and the VCDL have a great short video. It just came out last week. It's titled The Racist Roots of Gun Control. It's a minute long to the second. It's on YouTube and it's on my Facebook page. Go watch it. It'll move you. If it doesn't move you to stand up and cheer, it might move you to tears. Paul, what do you think?
I want to go back to the tweet that David Hogg put out. And I'm gonna move my show notes over to another screen here so I can read it directly. His tweet. This is a tweet for the founders of gun violence prevention movement, started centuries ago by almost entirely black, brown, and indigenous LGBTQ women and non-binary people that never got on the news or in most history books. Centuries, that would mean 2 centuries ago, which would mean it would be in 1820, about 50 years after, almost 50 years after the country was founded. LGBTQ at that point, if those of you who've listened to the show know that I'll fight for their rights. I'm very pro LGBTQ people, but at that point in time, they weren't pro-gun. They were pro-staying alive. Or they weren't anti-gun. They were pro-staying alive. If they came out, they were in mortal danger. And there was no anti-gun movement to speak of, even as far as...
late 1800s.
Yeah, I was going to say 1900. That really the anti-gun movement didn't really come around until the gangster movies of the 1930s. That's when things started to go south. But yeah, I just the ridiculousness of that tweet. I just had to comment. John, what do you think, man?
I was going to pass it off to Rob first.
Yeah, Paul, I want to back up your claim to a noted reference. Abraham Lincoln said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
Yes.
I think he was right.
I would agree with
Piglet
that.
needs to read that.
Yeah. And in my case, I actually sent a copy of Ken's YouTube video to the Brunswick County, North Carolina NAACP, who had objected to a sanctuary in North Carolina, and in specific in Brunswick County, which I found really sad. And I would also recommend a new book that's out called Wilmington's Lie. It is about how Wilmington, North Carolina, the Democrat white supremacists, the Klan, etc., used white supremacy, gun control, and an outright coup to overthrow a biracial local government in 1898. And by 1900, there were no black elected officials. By 1919, we had the Pistol Purchase Permit Bill, which was introduced by the brother-in-law of the architect of white supremacy in North Carolina. And it just goes on and on and on.
Wow.
John, I didn't know any of that. Thank you. Paul, I'm lucky to be on this podcast with people who are way smarter than me. I get taken to school. Thank you both.
Dude, I'm so people that are smarter than you, don't count me in there, because I just that's why I bring people on. Is there everybody here is smarter than me?
And say thank you, John.
Yeah. I do think that does do it for the news segment. We're going to step aside to break again. We've got our defensive gun use segment coming up, and the first one I find fascinating. It's another ex-spouse or behaving badly. You're going to want to stay in tune for that. We'll be back with that right after this.
Firearm Safety Institute is one of Northwest Illinois' premier firearm training companies. They provide superior firearm training to all levels of shooters. Gary Doherty has been a trainer and concealed weapons permit holder for many years. While living in Nevada, he carried legally and has the experience to train you to do the same. Firearms Safety Institute offers a wide range of courses designed to meet the personal needs of both seasoned shooters and those that are new to the world of firearms. If you are looking to apply for the Illinois Concealed Carry License, Firearms Safety Institute can provide you with the professional training that meets the state's requirements. Gary accommodates classes of all sizes and can provide individualized instruction if that is your personal preference. He's happy to work with you and your friends to arrange private classes and will come to your location and work around your schedule. If you would like to get your Illinois CCW or increase your firearm knowledge or skills, go to firearmsafetyinstitute.com to start the conversation. Mention the Polite Society podcast and receive a 10% discount on your training. Remember, that's firearmsafetyinstitute.com. Get your Illinois CCW today.
Hey, and welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Now, these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and please, you need to get formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations, although they should be. Monty, we got first one up out of Ohio.
2 days after a wild shootout on a rural Greene County road, the man who fired the fatal shots said, Wednesday had been a calm, normal morning until, quote, all of a sudden hell began, end quote. Lindsey Duncan and his wife arrived at their home in rural southwest Ohio community after going to Yellow Springs for coffee and breakfast. As they pulled into the driveway and stopped to get their mail, a man with a camouflage mask and hoodie approached the vehicle. This man was Duncan's ex-wife's new husband. He held a gun a foot from Molly Duncan's head. I thought it was a bad nightmare. I don't know what to do, Duncan said. Whatever happened after that was instinct. It wasn't me, it was instinct. Duncan said in 2 separate gun battles, bullets were flying inches past his wife's head. Duncan's ex-wife and her new husband had come to Ohio to confront Duncan about problems with a college fund for the former couple's 2 daughters. No issues were raised. They just pulled 2 handguns and started shooting. Molly Duncan called it an ambush. The ambush ended with both aggressors assuming Ohio temperature. Duncan and his ex-wife then were divorced in 2009. Greene County Sheriff's Office had dozens of entries in their logbooks for the address of the shooting, but most of them were alarm-related or drive-bys. Several entries in the sheriff's logbooks in 2015 and 16 listed the ex-wife as the complainant. A neighbor reported they were used to hearing gunfire related to hunting, but the shots they heard that day were not related to hunting or target shooting. She heard someone say, "Get on the ground and throw your gun down," then a lot of yelling and then silence. The homeowner has a concealed carry permit and is a bit of a celebrity. He is the owner of Genesis Weight Loss Companies and has made television appearances. The incident is listed as a justifiable homicide, but investigations continue, including the sealing of the deceased couple's North Carolina home while search warrants are being issued.
This sounds like a wake-up call for many of my students and friends who say, "Hey, Rob, let's go shooting." They have a dusty, unloaded gun up on a shelf, and they think they're armed for their own defense. They're not. A firearm is not a magic talisman. It's a tool. You need to learn how to use it. It needs to be within arm's reach. John, what do you tell your friends that you take to the range?
I'm just kind of going back to the couple who started it all, and they're worried about their daughters. Well, now they're dead. I mean, I have set up college funds for people, but I've never heard of anybody going to gunfire over a 529 plan. I'm just kind of bewildered.
I think this ex-wife was also some sort of had done some stunt work. So, yeah, somebody. I'm going to resort to my usual comment. I would love to see the toxicology report.
I was just going to go there if you didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's your thing, man. You're the one that usually does it. But if you didn't, I was going to pick up the torch for you, dude. All right, let's go and move on to Norfolk, Virginia.
Shakir Holly had been charged with second-degree murder and gun crimes after gunning down another man on July 9th. Norfolk prosecutors determined he fired in self-defense and dropped the murder case against him. The other man tried to rob Holly at gunpoint, and the gun, quote, went off, end quote. During a struggle, Holly was able to disarm the thug. The suspect walked away, but soon returned with 2 people and another firearm. Holly had maintained possession of the first firearm, and a gunfight soon was on. Holly was shot 5 times in the abdomen, arms, and legs. Holly fled to a nearby apartment and banged on the door until a tenant let him in. The witness said he told them, quote, "Shorty tried to kill me," end quote. Shorty was the nickname for a friend of his, or I guess you could say a former friend. The former friend died at the scene, as will usually happen when a bullet goes through your lungs and heart. In months since the shooting, Holly has made a complete recovery, though he had to use a colostomy bag while he recovered. The gun charges were for felon in possession of a gun, which was only the result of him picking up the firearm that had been used to attack him. The assailant was found at in the gun control memorial site. And go.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in first on this one, and I want to talk about the gun control memorial site. This is totally ridiculous. The people like this person, and I even don't want to use that term, person, but people like this person show up when they instigate crimes and die in the commission of those crimes. It's totally ridiculous. The other thing I want to bring up is and this is political. It's not self-defense or defensive gun use related. If somebody committed a felony and served their time, paid their debt to society, is out and rejoined society as a productive member of society, why are they not allowed to own a gun? That is absolutely ridiculous. They get the right to vote back in most states. They certainly never lose their right to free speech. All their other rights are restored. Why is their life not worth defending? Gary, what do you think, man?
Well, right, Paul. That's part of the question is, if they're still dangerous, too dangerous to own a gun, why are they letting them out of jail?
Amen.
Thank you.
And second of all, what kind of wacko prosecutor is charging this guy with a felon in possession of a gun? I mean, it's a current law. All of us here don't agree with it. But what the heck is going on? He's charging him for felon in possession of a gun because he picked up the gun that was used to attack him?
And successfully used that gun in his own defense, yeah.
Come on, Rob.
Well, okay, Gary, you've seen it all the time. These days, prosecutors will stack enough charges on that you cannot afford to defend yourself, and therefore you'll take a plea deal. That's exactly the same problem that Marcus Weldon faced, except Marcus's community rallied around him and did fight a number of made-up charges. Shakir Holly stayed in the fight and saved his own life, even though he was shot 5 times. That's a lesson I can learn.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Even as Rob pointed out, Paul has pointed out several times on the show, in South Dakota, if you write a bad check for $250, you're a felon.
Yep.
You shouldn't have a gun? What the heck is that?
It does sound like something out of the 1890s, doesn't it?
It sounds stupid.
Fortunately, some courts have actually started to make a differentiation in restoring gun rights between violent felonies and non-violent. The writing the bad check.
Right, John, but should you have to get a lawyer and spend thousands of dollars to get your gun rights back because you wrote a bad check when you were 18 or 19 years old? You're stupid. Now you're 25, you got a family you want to protect. You got to spend thousands of dollars to be able to protect them?
Exactly.
Come on.
Okay, you have my vote, Gary.
Sherry won't let me run. She's afraid people will talk mean about me.
Like they don't already.
I talk mean about you all the time, man.
I know.
And I correct him. I'm standing up for you, Gary.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. That does wrap up our defensive gun use segment. We're going to go ahead and step aside to our final break. We'll talk about blog posts when we get back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
All right, welcome back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. At this point, we used to start begging for emails, but I much prefer the live show. If you just come watch us live on Facebook, go search Facebook for Polite Society Podcast. Watch our live videos. Comment as we are on the air. We'll get your comments on the air. If you do want to write us, you certainly can. The address for that is onair@politicsandguns.com. Rob, what's been going on over at Slowfax this week, man?
I commented on Michael Bloomberg, Second Amendment sanctuary cities, and President Donald Trump. All that was tied up in one article. I noticed that 14 counties passed Second Amendment resolutions in 1 week. That article is titled Rapid Social Change from the Top Down and from the Bottom Up. My articles are up at Clash Daily, at Ammoland, and at my blog, slowfax.wordpress.com. And if I say so myself, this particular article is almost as good as the ones by John Richardson. Hey, John, argue with me later. Tell me what's new at your blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
Well, continuing on about sanctuary cities and counties, over 60 North Carolina counties, its last count I had was 63 or 64, have now passed Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. We saw what was happening across the border in Virginia and have been fairly proactive. That said, some of the largest counties, even those with a Republican majority, have not taken the issue up. This seems much more of, in North Carolina at least, as an urban-rural split than a Democrat-Republican split. About 75% of Democratic county commissioners statewide have voted in favor of Second Amendment sanctuaries. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right. I want to, before we take off and shut the show down, I want to recommend you go to Facebook. For those of you that do have Facebook, search for Polite Society Podcast listeners. We get more listeners in there every week. It's a great area where listeners to the show can talk. They share news stories, and it's just I've been there, not as much as I should be, but I've been there a lot recently, and just check it out. If you feel free to join, and we'll hang out there. That does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Rhonda Ezell for joining us today. So for Amy, Tracy, Belle, Kat, Dana, Gary, John, Rachel, Susan, Monty, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.